December 14, 1956. 9:47 p.m. Tallahassee, Florida. Dorothy Mae Henderson waves goodbye. She's wearing a blue cotton dress. Pearl earrings catch the dim parking lot light. She carries a leather purse, walks toward her car. A 1953 Chevrolet sedan, cream-colored, parked in the third row. That's the last time anyone sees her alive. 3 hours later, a police officer finds her car. Engine still warm. Driver's door standing open. Her purse rests on the passenger seat. Reading glasses folded beside it. Keys in the ignition. Dorothy Mae Henderson, gone. 28 years old. Third-grade teacher at Leon Elementary. Beloved by her students. Engaged to be married in 6 months. No enemies. No secrets. No reason to disappear. The temperature that night, 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Her last words to a friend, "See you Sunday." The exact location, corner of Gadsden and Monroe First Baptist Church parking lot. No scream. No struggle. No witnesses. By midnight, her fiancé reports her missing. By dawn, Tallahassee knows something evil has entered their community. Dorothy Mae Henderson has vanished into the December night. What happened in those missing hours would remain a mystery for 68 years. Before we continue with Dorothy's story, I want to welcome you to this channel. If you're passionate about solved cold cases, about justice finally delivered, about families receiving answers after decades of silence, please subscribe. Your support allows us to investigate these forgotten cases, to give voices back to the victims who've been silent for far too long. And I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. Dorothy's story reaches across continents and decades. True crime connects us all in the pursuit of truth. Now let's return to Tallahassee, 1956, and discover who Dorothy Mae Henderson really was. Dorothy Mae Henderson was born on March 3, 1928, in Valdosta, Georgia. The only child of Thomas and Ruth Henderson. Thomas worked as a postal clerk, Ruth as a seamstress. They raised Dorothy with love, discipline, and deep Baptist faith. She was a gentle child. Quiet but observant. Her third-grade teacher, Mrs. Evelyn Price, wrote in a report card, "Dorothy has a gift for making other children feel seen." That gift would define her life. After graduating high school in 1946, Dorothy attended Georgia State College for Women. She earned her teaching certificate in 1950 and spent 4 years teaching in rural Georgia schools. Small classrooms, wood-burning stoves, children whose families picked cotton for survival. Dorothy bought school supplies with her own meager salary. She stayed after school to tutor struggling readers. Parents adored her. In September 1954, she moved to Tallahassee. The state capital offered better pay, more opportunities. She rented a modest one-bedroom apartment on Thomasville Road, white walls, floral curtains, a small kitchen where she baked cookies for her students every Friday. Leon Elementary School became her world. Third graders aged 8 and 9 filled her classroom. The walls were covered in their drawings, crayon pictures of families, pets, houses with oversized sons. Dorothy kept every single one. She learned each child's reading level, their home situations, their fears and dreams. She never raised her voice. She corrected mistakes with patience. She made learning feel like safety. Outside the classroom, Dorothy sang soprano in the First Baptist Church Choir. She volunteered at the Tallahassee Public Library, shelving books on Thursday evenings. She wrote letters to her parents every week, cheerful updates about her students, recipe requests from her mother, reassurances that she was eating enough. And then, in April 1956, she met Robert Caldwell. A church picnic. Robert, 32 years old, worked as an accountant for a local timber company. Tall, serious, kind eyes. They talked for 3 hours about books, faith, teaching, numbers. Robert asked if he could write to her. Dorothy said yes. By July they were courting. By October, Robert proposed beside Lake Ella at sunset. Dorothy called her parents crying with joy. They set the wedding date, June 15, 1957. Dorothy had already chosen her dress, ivory lace, tea-length. Her mother was sewing the veil. Every morning, Dorothy walked to Leon Elementary. Every Wednesday, choir practice. Every other Friday, church socials. Sunday mornings, she called her parents at exactly 10 a.m. She had no enemies, no dark secrets, no dangerous habits. Everyone loved Dorothy Mae Henderson, which makes what happened next absolutely incomprehensible. The First Baptist Church Christmas social began at 6:30 p.m. on Friday, December 14, 1956. Approximately 75 people attended. Families with young children, choir members, church leadership. the elderly congregation who rarely missed any event. The church basement had been decorated with paper snowflakes, strings of popcorn, a small Christmas tree in the corner. Tables held platters of gingerbread cookies, fruitcake, sugar cookies shaped like stars. Dorothy Mae Henderson arrived at 6:45 p.m. with her friend, Margaret Ellis, a fellow teacher. Dorothy wore her blue cotton dress, the one with buttons down the front, pearl earrings her mother gave her for her 25th birthday, and a light cardigan against the December chill. Witnesses remember her smiling, serving cookies to children. The smell of coffee and cinnamon filled the basement. The timeline of that night has been reconstructed with painful precision. 7:15 p.m., Dorothy helped clear dessert tables. She chatted with Mrs. Louise Grant, the church secretary, about choir selections for Christmas Eve service. 8 p.m., she sat with Robert Caldwell at a corner table. They discussed honeymoon plans. Robert wanted the North Carolina mountains. Dorothy preferred the beach. 8:30 p.m., they held hands. Laughed about something private. Witnesses remember thinking they looked happy. 9 p.m., Robert kissed Dorothy's cheek, told her he had to leave. Early work commitment Saturday morning. Timber shipment arriving at dawn. Dorothy understood. She'd stay to help clean up. 9:20 p.m., Margaret Ellis told Dorothy she was leaving. Dorothy said she'd stay another 20 minutes, then head home. 9:35 p.m., Earl Patterson, the church janitor, saw Dorothy carrying empty punch bowls to the kitchen. He held the door for her. She thanked him. 9:42 p.m., Margaret Ellis returned. She'd forgotten her coat. Dorothy was wiping down tables. Margaret asked if Dorothy wanted company walking to her car. Dorothy smiled, said, "I'll be fine. Just one more minute." 9:47 p.m., Mrs. Louise Grant, locking the church office, saw Dorothy through the basement window. Dorothy waved. Walked toward the parking lot. Blue dress moving through the December darkness. That was the last confirmed sighting of Dorothy Mae Henderson. The parking lot was poorly lit. Gravel surface uneven. About 30 cars remained. Most attendees had already left. Dorothy's 1953 Chevrolet sedan was parked in the third row, passenger side facing the street. Between 9:47 p.m. and 12:43 a.m., something happened. What occurred during those hours would haunt Tallahassee for decades. Because at 12:43 a.m., Officer James McKinney, conducting routine patrol, drove past the church. He noticed a car still in the lot, strange for after midnight. He pulled in. Approached the vehicle. A cream-colored Chevrolet. Engine warm. Driver's door open. Dome light on, battery draining. A brown leather purse on the passenger seat. Reading glasses. A church bulletin dated December 14th. Keys in the ignition. No Dorothy. Officer McKinney radioed dispatch. Possible abandoned vehicle, First Baptist Church. Need backup. Within 30 minutes, the parking lot filled with police cars. Flashlights swept the gravel. Officers searched the surrounding area. And slowly, terribly, the truth settled in. Dorothy Mae Henderson had vanished. By 1 a.m., Tallahassee police detectives arrived at First Baptist Church. Detective William Bill Granger took command of the scene. 56 years old. 30-year veteran of the department. His reputation was built on meticulous attention to detail and an almost obsessive refusal to give up on cases. He had a weathered face, sharp eyes, and hands that never stopped moving, always taking notes, always searching. Granger examined Dorothy's car. The engine was warm but not hot, suggesting it had been running recently, then turned off. The driver's door stood open at a 40-degree angle. No signs of struggle inside the vehicle. The purse contained her wallet, $12, a lipstick, a small Bible, and a photograph of Robert. Nothing missing except Dorothy herself. At 1:30 a.m., police contacted Robert Caldwell. He'd been asleep. The phone call shattered his world. He arrived at the church parking lot within 20 minutes, still wearing his house slippers, face gray with shock. "Where is she?" he kept asking. "Where's Dorothy?" No one had an answer. By dawn, bloodhounds arrived. German shepherds trained in tracking. They sniffed Dorothy's cardigan, taken from her apartment. The dogs tracked her scent from the car to the edge of the parking lot, approximately 40 feet. Then the scent vanished completely at the street. The implication was immediate and chilling. Dorothy had gotten into another vehicle. Detective Granger ordered a full canvass. Every person at the church social that night, all 75 attendees, would be interviewed. Every vehicle in the parking lot would be documented. Every nearby resident would be questioned. The church became a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the parking lot. Officers searched the woods behind the church, the creek running through the property, the maintenance sheds. They found nothing. By 8 a.m. December 15th, Dorothy's parents received the call. Thomas and Ruth Henderson drove from Valdosta in stunned silence. Ruth sobbed the entire 3 hours. Thomas gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. When they arrived in Tallahassee, Detective Granger met them at the police station. He explained what they knew, which was almost nothing. Dorothy had walked to her car, then disappeared. "My daughter wouldn't run away," Thomas Henderson said, voice shaking. "Someone took her." Granger agreed. By December 16th, the local newspaper ran the headline, "Local Teacher Vanishes After Church Event." Dorothy's photograph, her gentle smile, her kind eyes, stared out from the front page. The community reacted with shock, then fear, then a creeping paranoia that would transform Tallahassee entirely. Because if Dorothy Mae Henderson could vanish from a church parking lot, a good woman, a teacher, beloved by everyone, then no one was safe. The immediate theories multiplied. Maybe she'd had an accident, wandered into the woods disoriented? Searches continued. Maybe she'd run away with a secret lover? Investigators found no evidence of any other relationship. Maybe she'd been abducted by a stranger passing through town? The first 48 hours yielded nothing concrete. Just questions, fear, and one inescapable truth. Dorothy Mae Henderson had evaporated into the December night. Within 1 week, Tallahassee became a different town. Parents stopped letting their daughters walk anywhere alone. The evening streets, once filled with people strolling after dinner, emptied by dusk. Women checked over their shoulders constantly. Men installed new locks on their doors. The illusion of safety, that fundamental belief that their small capital city was protected from real evil, shattered completely. Margaret Ellis, Dorothy's friend, was consumed by guilt. She replayed that night endlessly. If only she'd insisted Dorothy leave with her. If only she'd walked her to the car. If only. Margaret stopped teaching for 3 months. She'd wake screaming, dreaming of Dorothy calling for help while Margaret drove away. Robert Caldwell couldn't work. He spent his days driving back roads, searching ditches and forests, calling Dorothy's name into empty woods. His co-workers watched him deteriorate, 20 pounds lost in 2 weeks, eyes hollow, hands trembling. He'd sit in his car outside the church parking lot for hours, staring at the spot where her Chevrolet had been found, as if staring hard enough would bring her back. Dorothy's third-grade students didn't understand. Their substitute teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, tried to explain that Miss Dorothy was away. But 8-year-olds asked painful questions. When is Miss Dorothy coming back? Did we do something wrong? Is she sick? One little girl, Emily Watkins, drew a picture, Dorothy with angel wings floating above the classroom. Emily's mother found it, wept for an hour. Dorothy's parents, Thomas and Ruth Henderson, moved temporarily to Tallahassee. They rented a room at a boarding house, distributed hundreds of missing person flyers, Dorothy's smiling face on every telephone pole, every storefront window. They held press conferences, begging for information. Ruth's voice would break, "Please, if you know anything at all, help us bring our daughter home." The community turned on itself. Rumors spread like disease. Some whispered Dorothy had a secret boyfriend, that she'd run away to start a new life. Others suggested satanic cult activity, ridiculous, but fear erases reason. Still others blamed drifters, migrant workers, anyone from outside Tallahassee. The First Baptist Church became a site of morbid curiosity. People drove past slowly, staring. Some stopped, stood in the parking lot, trying to feel whatever darkness had been there that night. Reverend Thomas Whitmore held a prayer vigil on December 21st. 200 people attended. They sang hymns. They prayed for Dorothy's safe return. Deep down, most had already accepted she wasn't coming home alive. Detective Granger received dozens of tips daily. A woman who looked like Dorothy spotted in Pensacola. A suspicious man seen near the church. A psychic claiming to have visions of Dorothy's location. Every single lead went nowhere. By January 1957, the question changed. No longer, "Where is Dorothy?" Now it was, "What happened to her?" Detective Bill Granger built his suspect list methodically, logically, exhaustively. Suspect Category 1, transients and drifters. Tallahassee's railroad yards attracted men passing through, looking for work, running from something, or just moving. Granger's team questioned dozens. They checked alibis, backgrounds, criminal histories. Nothing connected any drifter to Dorothy's disappearance. Suspect Category 2, Earl Patterson, church janitor. Patterson was 53 years old. He'd been one of the last people to see Dorothy that night. He had a 1949 arrest for public intoxication, minor but enough to warrant scrutiny. Granger interrogated Patterson for 6 hours. The man broke down crying, insisting he'd never hurt Miss Dorothy, that she was a sweet lady, that he went straight home after locking the church. His wife confirmed his alibi. He'd arrived home at 10:15 p.m., hadn't left again. Neighbors saw his truck parked at his house all night. Patterson was cleared. But the interrogation destroyed him. He quit his job. Left Tallahassee. The suspicion, even unfounded, ruined him. Suspect Category 3, the mystery man. 3 witnesses reported seeing a tall man in a dark coat near the church earlier that evening. Approximately 6 feet tall, slim build, dark hair. No one got a clear look at his face. Police created a composite sketch. It was distributed across North Florida. Hundreds of tips poured in, neighbors, co-workers, strangers who looked suspicious. None led anywhere. The mystery man remained a ghost. Suspect Category 4. Martin Sheffield, former boyfriend. Dorothy had briefly dated Martin Sheffield during college. The relationship ended amicably in 1949. Sheffield had moved to Tallahassee in 1955, coincidentally. Granger tracked him down. Sheffield was devastated by Dorothy's disappearance. He'd heard about it, wanted to help. His alibi was airtight. He'd been working the night shift at Colonial Printing Press from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. 6 co-workers confirmed his presence. Clear. Suspect Category 5. Robert Caldwell, fiancé. This was the most painful angle. Police protocol demands investigating those closest to the victim. Granger hated it. But he had no choice. Robert Caldwell's early departure from the church social haunted the investigation. Why leave? What if he'd returned? Robert submitted to a polygraph examination. He passed cleanly. His timeline was confirmed. He'd driven straight home, gone to bed by 10 p.m. His landlady confirmed hearing him snoring through the wall. Robert was cleared. But the suspicion broke something in him. The fact that anyone could think he'd hurt Dorothy, it destroyed his faith in humanity. Meanwhile, physical searches continued. Police dragged Lake Ella. They searched abandoned buildings, burned out houses, construction sites. They walked grid patterns through forests, looking for disturbed earth, shallow graves. Nothing. By summer 1957, media attention faded. Other stories replaced Dorothy. Other crimes demanded resources. By 1958, Dorothy Mae Henderson's case was officially cold. Detective Granger kept working it. He'd review the file late at night, alone in his office, searching for something he'd missed. But other cases required attention. Homicides, robberies, rapes. The living demanded justice too. Dorothy's file moved from his desk to a filing cabinet. Then to a storage room. Then to a warehouse where cold cases went to die. Dorothy Mae Henderson became a ghost story. A cautionary tale. A mystery with no resolution. Time is cruel to unsolved cases. Dorothy's parents never stopped searching. Thomas Henderson wrote letters to every new Tallahassee police chief, begging them to reopen the investigation. Ruth kept Dorothy's childhood bedroom exactly as it was. Frozen in time, waiting for a daughter who would never return. Thomas died in 1972 of a heart attack. Ruth always said it was a broken heart. He died without answers. Ruth Henderson lived 16 more years. She moved into a nursing home in 1986, her mind sharp but her body failing. She'd tell nurses about her daughter, the teacher, the kind girl, the one who disappeared. Most assumed she was confused, that Dorothy was a delusion. Ruth died in 1989. Her last words, "Find my baby." Robert Caldwell never married. He couldn't. How do you move forward when the love of your life vanishes? He moved to Atlanta in 1965, unable to bear Tallahassee's memories. He worked as an accountant, lived alone, spoke rarely about his past. Co-workers who asked about his love life received the same answer: "I was engaged once. It didn't work out." On June 15th every year, the day he and Dorothy should have married, Robert visited a church. Any church. He'd sit in silence, staring at the altar, and weep. Margaret Ellis carried her guilt until death. She died in 2003, having spent 47 years wondering if she could have saved her friend. Detective Bill Granger retired in 1981. But he took Dorothy's case file home. Every December 14th he'd open it, review everything again, hoping for some revelation. It never came. Granger died in 1994. His daughter found the file in his home office. A note was paper-clipped to the front: "Dorothy deserved better. I failed her." The case changed hands at Tallahassee PD multiple times. New detectives would review it briefly, find no new leads, move on. By the 1990s, most of the original witnesses were dead. Evidence had degraded. Memories had faded. Dorothy's apartment building was demolished in 1978. Leon Elementary was rebuilt in 1983. First Baptist Church installed modern lighting in the parking lot, as if brightness could erase darkness. Dorothy's students, now adults with children and grandchildren, occasionally wondered what happened to Miss Dorothy. Some theorized she'd been murdered immediately, buried in woods that had since become shopping centers. Others believed she'd been taken far away. The file sat essentially untouched from 1995 to 2021. 26 years of bureaucratic limbo. Dorothy Mae Henderson was a name in a database, a box in a warehouse, a forgotten tragedy. Until January 2021. Until Detective Sarah Chin opened that box and decided Dorothy Mae Henderson deserved one more chance at justice. In January 2021, Tallahassee Police Department established a dedicated cold case unit. 3 detectives. 1 mission: review unsolved cases using modern forensic technology. Detective Sarah Chin led the unit. 38 years old. Former FBI forensic specialist. She'd built her career on genetic genealogy, using DNA and family trees to identify suspects in cases decades old. Chin was methodical, patient, brilliant. She'd solved 6 cold cases in her FBI career. Now she brought that expertise to Tallahassee. She started by requesting case files from the 1950s through 1970s. Boxes arrived from storage, decades of dust, yellowed paper, fading photographs. Dorothy Mae Henderson's file caught her attention immediately. The original investigation had been exhaustive. Detective Granger's notes were meticulous. Witness statements were detailed. And crucially, evidence had been properly preserved. Chin requested the original evidence boxes. What arrived changed everything. Dorothy's purse. Her reading glasses. The church bulletin. And something extraordinary: swabs taken from the driver's door handle and steering wheel in 1956. In 1956, DNA analysis didn't exist. Detectives collected the swabs hoping future technology might help. They had no idea what they were preserving. In 2021, those swabs were priceless. Chin sent the samples to Othram Labs, a private forensic laboratory specializing in degraded DNA recovery. The process took weeks. Extracting genetic material from 65-year-old cotton swabs required cutting-edge technology and patience. In April 2021, results arrived. The lab had successfully isolated a partial male DNA profile from the door handle. Skin cells left by someone who'd touched Dorothy's car that night in 1956. The DNA wasn't Dorothy's. It wasn't Robert Caldwell's. His DNA was on file for elimination purposes. It belonged to someone else. Someone who'd touched that door handle. Someone who might have been the last person to see Dorothy alive. The profile was partial, not complete enough for CODIS, the National Criminal DNA Database. But it was enough for genetic genealogy. Chin uploaded the DNA profile to GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, public databases where people voluntarily share DNA for ancestry research. Then she waited. Genetic genealogy works by finding distant relatives, then building family trees to identify possible suspects. It's painstaking work. It requires patience, expertise, and a little luck. In June 2021, Chin got a hit. A 4th cousin match. Someone whose great-great-grandfather shared ancestry with the unknown male whose DNA was on Dorothy's car. It was the break Chin needed. The hunt for Dorothy Mae Henderson's killer entered its final phase. Detective Sarah Chin partnered with a genetic genealogist, a specialist in building family trees from DNA matches. They started with one 4th cousin match. From there, they worked backward and forward through generations. The process was exhausting. Birth certificates, marriage records, death certificates, census data, church registries, newspaper obituaries. They traced back to a couple who lived in rural Georgia in the 1890s, the shared ancestors. From that couple, the genealogist built forward. 6 children, dozens of grandchildren, hundreds of descendants spreading across the South. 6 months of work, hundreds of hours. Building trees, eliminating branches, narrowing possibilities. By September 2021, they'd isolated a specific family branch. Descendants who lived in North Florida in the 1950s. Chin cross-referenced with Tallahassee residents in 1956. One name emerged: Thomas Richard Tommy Whitmore, Jr. Born August 12, 1930. Son of Reverend Thomas Whitmore, the pastor of First Baptist Church. Chin's hands shook as she read the name. Tommy Whitmore had been at the church social that night. He'd been questioned briefly during the original investigation. Detective Granger's notes described him: 26 years old, pastor's son, helps father with church duties, lives in small house behind church property. Polite, cooperative, seemed genuinely concerned about Miss Henderson. No follow-up. No suspicion. Why would there be? He was the pastor's son. A trusted member of the community. Tommy Whitmore had been invisible. Chin dug deeper into his history. After the disappearance, Tommy had stayed in Tallahassee until 1958, then moved to Miami. He'd worked in real estate. Built a successful career. Married in 1962. 3 children. Became a deacon at Coral Gables Baptist Church. Photographs showed a respectable man. Suits and ties. Family Christmas cards. Church leadership positions. For 65 years, Tommy Whitmore had lived a normal, unremarkable, respectable life. And he'd gotten away with murder. In 2021 he was 91 years old, living in a nursing home in Fort Lauderdale. Chin had a partial DNA profile that pointed to his family line. But she needed direct confirmation. She needed Tommy Whitmore's DNA to prove definitively he was the man whose skin cells were on Dorothy's car door handle. The problem: Chin couldn't legally compel a 91-year-old man to provide DNA without probable cause beyond genetic genealogy. She'd have to collect his DNA covertly. In October 2021, Chin and Detective Marcus Webb traveled to Fort Lauderdale. They surveilled Whitmore's nursing home for 4 days. On the 4th day, Tommy Whitmore's daughter took him to a nearby cafe for lunch. Chin and Webb followed. They sat 3 tables away. Ordered coffee. Wash. When Tommy Whitmore finished his coffee and his daughter walked him back to the car, leaving the cup on the table, Detective Webb made his move. He spoke quietly with the cafe's busser, showed his badge, explained the situation. The busser handed over Tommy Whitmore's coffee cup in a sealed bag. The cup went to the lab. 2 weeks later, November 3, 2021, the lab called. 99.9% DNA match. After 65 years they had their killer. November 22, 2021. 8:30 a.m. Detective Sarah Chin, Detective Marcus Webb and Fort Lauderdale police arrived at Coral Breeze Nursing Home with an arrest warrant for first-degree murder. They walked down a sterile hallway, fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant and old age. Room 14B. Tommy Whitmore sat in a wheelchair beside the window. 91 years old. Thin, fragile, oxygen tube in his nose. The walls displayed photographs. His children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. A Bible rested on the nightstand. Chin introduced herself. Mr. Whitmore, I'm Detective Sarah Chen with Tallahassee Police Department. We're here about Dorothy Mae Henderson. Silence. A long, terrible silence. Then Tommy Whitmore looked directly at Chin. I wondered when you'd come. 6 words. 6 words that confirmed everything. Chin read him his Miranda rights. Whitmore waived his right to an attorney. He said he wanted to talk. That he'd been waiting to talk for 65 years. And sitting in that nursing home room, under fluorescent lights, 91-year-old Tommy Whitmore confessed to murder. His voice was quiet. Matter of fact. Almost relieved. I loved her, he said. I loved Dorothy for 2 years. Since the first day I saw her at church. She was so kind. She smiled at everyone. Including me. He paused. Breathed through his oxygen tube. She didn't know. I never told her. But I watched her. Every Sunday. Every Wednesday at choir practice. Every church social. I memorized everything about her. Chin stayed silent. Let him talk. That night, December 14th, I saw her walk to her car alone. I followed her. I'd been drinking earlier trying to build courage. When she got to her car I told her. I told her I loved her. That she shouldn't marry Robert. That she should be with me. Whitmore's hands trembled in his lap. Dorothy was shocked. She was kind even then. She said she was flattered but she loved Robert. She said I was a good man, that I'd find someone. She tried to let me down gently. His voice cracked. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed her. Tried to kiss her. She pushed me away. She said she was going to tell my father. That what I'd done was inappropriate. She was going to tell everyone. Tears ran down Whitmore's weathered face. I panicked. I grabbed her throat. She tried to scream but couldn't. I didn't mean to, I didn't plan it, but I couldn't stop. I squeezed until she stopped moving. Chin felt sick. But she kept her voice steady. What did you do with her body? My truck was parked behind the church. I carried her there. Drove to a construction site about 20 miles outside town. They were building the new highway, what became Interstate 10. There was a trench dug ready for concrete. I buried her there. The next day they poured concrete over it. Dorothy Mae Henderson had been entombed under a highway for 65 years. Thousands of cars drove over her grave every day. And no one knew. Tommy Whitmore had gone home that night, washed his hands and never spoke of it again. He married 6 months later. Raised 3 children. Went to church every Sunday. Sang hymns. Prayed for forgiveness in private. He lived 65 years carrying his secret. Until DNA technology reached across decades and found him. Tommy Whitmore was arrested, transported to Tallahassee, and booked into Leon County Jail. His mugshot went viral. A frail 91-year-old man in handcuffs. The monster who'd hidden in plain sight for 65 years. The news shocked both Tallahassee and Miami. People who'd known Whitmore, church members, business associates, neighbors, couldn't reconcile the kind, respectable man they knew with the murderer who'd confessed. His 3 children released a statement. "We are devastated beyond words. We never knew. We apologize to Dorothy's family. We're struggling to understand how our father could have done this." Whitmore's wife had died in 2015. His children wondered if she'd ever known the truth. Legal proceedings moved slowly due to Whitmore's age and declining health. In February 2022, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. The charge was reduced due to his cooperation and advanced age. The sentencing hearing was held in April 2022. Dorothy's family, distant cousins, former students now in their 70s, filled the courtroom. They read victim impact statements. One of Dorothy's former students, Emily Watkins, now Emily Brennan, 74 years old, said, "Miss Dorothy taught me to read. She stayed after school to help me when I struggled. She made me feel smart. Tommy Whitmore stole her from us. He stole 65 years of justice." Margaret Ellis's daughter read a letter her mother had written before her 2003 death. "I pray Dorothy is found. I pray her family gets answers. I've carried guilt my whole life. Please God, let there be justice." The judge sentenced Whitmore to life in prison. Due to his medical condition, he was placed in a prison medical facility. Authorities searched the section of Interstate 10 where Whitmore claimed he'd buried Dorothy. Core samples were taken. Ground-penetrating radar was deployed. On July 12, 2022, they found human remains. Fragmented. Degraded. But enough for DNA extraction. The remains were confirmed as Dorothy Mae Henderson. After 66 years, she was coming home. In September 2022, Dorothy Mae Henderson's remains were laid to rest in Tallahassee's Oakland Cemetery. Her headstone reads, "Dorothy Mae Henderson, 1928 to 1956. Beloved teacher, daughter, friend. Finally home." Over 100 people attended her funeral. Former students. Community members. Law enforcement officers. Detective Sarah Chin stood in the back, quietly weeping. They shared stories. Dorothy's patience with struggling students. Her beautiful singing voice. Her infectious laugh. Her capacity for kindness. Robert Caldwell, 98 years old and in failing health, was unable to attend. But he sent a letter read aloud by his nephew. "I've loved Dorothy for 66 years. I never stopped. Not for one single day. She was the light of my life, the future I should have had. Every June 15th, I mourned the wedding that never happened. Every Christmas, I remembered the last time I saw her smile. I'm grateful she's been found. I'm grateful she can finally rest. I'll see her again soon." Robert Caldwell died 3 months later, in December 2022. He was buried beside his parents in Atlanta. In his wallet, police found a photograph, Dorothy at a church picnic, laughing, young and alive. He'd carried it for 66 years. The case officially closed in October 2022. Tommy Whitmore died in prison in March 2023. He was 92. His final words to a prison chaplain, "I'm sorry. I've been sorry every day since. But sorry doesn't resurrect the dead. Sorry doesn't give back 66 years of stolen justice." Dorothy Mae Henderson's story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about evil. Tommy Whitmore wasn't a monster lurking in shadows. He was a pastor's son. A respected community member. Someone who sat in church pews, sang hymns, helped at socials. Evil doesn't always announce itself with violence and menace. Sometimes it wears a familiar face. Sometimes it smiles at you on Sunday mornings. Dorothy's case also reveals the extraordinary power of modern forensic science. Genetic genealogy has solved dozens of cold cases, delivering justice that seemed impossible. Those 1956 cotton swabs, preserved by Detective Granger's meticulous work, became the key to solving a 65-year-old murder. Detective Sarah Chin said in a 2022 interview, Dorothy deserved to live. She deserved to teach her students, marry Robert, have children, grow old. Tommy Whitmore stole that future over wounded pride and rejected love. But Dorothy has her name back now. She's not the missing teacher anymore. She's Dorothy Mae Henderson. And we know what happened to her. Sometimes that's all justice can offer, the truth. Dorothy's story reminds us that cold cases are never truly closed. They're waiting. Waiting for technology to advance. Waiting for a dedicated detective to open that dusty box. Waiting for time to reveal what darkness tried to hide. Every cold case is a person. A life interrupted. A family shattered. Dreams stolen. And somewhere always the truth waits to be discovered. Dorothy Mae Henderson waited 66 years. But truth is patient. And justice, though delayed, finally came home. Rest in peace, Dorothy. You are remembered. You are mourned. You are loved. Your students never forgot you. Your story will never be forgotten.